Welcome everybody, it's Debbie O'Neill of Quick Designs, and I'm so happy to be here with the Scrap Happy family, showing you some cool things about Cricut Design Space and using your Cricut for your scrapbook layouts. I've got several tips to show you. Some of them are in the software and some of them are helpful as you're working with your cuts from the Cricut. Let me start by showing that I'm on my Design Space desktop app, and Cricut also has a mobile app for both the iPhone and iPads, and then they have another app that is for Android devices. So you can find those either in the Apple Store or in the Google Play Store. So, and those are completely free, so you can use those. A lot of people don't realize that they're free and they can use the app. Now, the way that I prefer to work with when I'm doing designs for my scrapbook pages is to use the desktop version of Design Space. That's what you see me using here, is the desktop version. One of the things that I've done is that I have created an SVG file to share with you guys of a scrapbook layout that I created, and I'm going to show you how I get it into Design Space. Then I'm going to show you how do I manipulate the file so that it makes it easier for me to lay out and cut it for my scrapbook pages. Now, the first thing you need to do is you have to have downloaded an SVG file from somewhere. Okay, I'm going to be giving you one that you can get from me to upload, but you'll go out and you'll download it. So there's all kinds of files. So they can be scrapbook layouts, or they can just be images that you want to use on a scrapbook layout. A lot of them are free. There's a bunch of places online where you can get free files. They may be files that you pay for. The first thing you need to know is that when you download a SVG file, it's going to come in a zipped folder. And a zip folder looks like this, and it has a little zipper on it. You will put this somewhere on your computer where you'll know where it is. Once you get it in there, what you have to do is you have to unzip it. Now, I am using a Windows 10, so what I show you will show you how you unzip your file. You're going to be extracting the files. So if you're not using Windows 10, you're using some other operating system, you may need to look at how do you unzip file folders. Okay, so you could Google that. But all you have to do in Windows 10 is come over here. I right-clicked the file folder that's zipped, and I went here to where it says Extract All. So this little dialog box pops up, and I'm going to go to Extract All, and you're going to see it says Extract Compressed Zipped Folders, which is what we want to do, and it says where do you want it, and I just always have it unzip it in the same file folder that I downloaded it to. And then down here on the bottom, you just say extract. And what it's doing is that it's unpacking that folder, so to speak. Once it's unpacked it, you'll notice that this is now the file. That's the file name. And then all of the items inside of that are now available for you to see them. Several things in here. The first, of course, will be the SVG file. So there will be a file that has a .svg extension on it. That's the file that we're going to want to upload into Design Space. I'm going to show you that process here in a moment. You may get a file that has other extensions on it. It's for other types of machines, like a DXF file. But when you're working with Cricut, you're going to look for the one that says .svg. So that is your SVG file. Then the other thing that you'll see is that sometimes there's a PDF. Now the PDF in my case, when you get my file, is its layout instructions. And usually most designers have that. It's a PDF file. It may have a picture of the project completed. It'll have maybe even a supply list or some idea of what was used to make that layout or project. And it'll also sometimes have links to other things. You want to be sure and open that up. In Design Space, the thing that I want to tell you is that when you import something into Design Space, it's an SVG file. Sometimes it doesn't always import in at the size that the designer intended for you to use it. A lot of times in these PDF files, you'll see they will give you the instructions for what size you need to size it in Design Space. See me do that here in a moment, so you'll know what I'm talking about. And then there usually is an about this file. And that's always a text document. And this has to do with the licensing for the image that you've downloaded. So you always want to look at that, make sure you're not violating that. The files that I share are for personal use only. You cannot recreate the project and sell it. You cannot sell the file, anything like that, but you're welcome to use it for your own personal use. So you need to look at the terms of service basically for that particular file that you downloaded. So you'll find that in the About This file within this zip folder. Okay, now we've got all this, we're good to go. This is just showing that this is the open file folder. And once you're in Design Space, then you will be able to go into your left-hand menu here in the Design Space screen and go down here where it says Upload. Now, you'll see two things. This is for images. So this is telling you if it's a JPEG image, a GIF image, a PNG, a BMP, an SVG, or a DXF file, this is where you're going to upload it to. The other one over here is when you have patterns that you're going to upload. We're not doing that today. We are uploading an SVG file. So we're going to click Upload Image. We're going to go to Browse. So it's going to browse my computer so we can see where did I put that file. So I'm going to come over here. So you would go to wherever you have it on your computer. Okay. Then you would open up the file that you've opened up, right? We've unzipped it, the one that we unzipped, and you're going to come find your SVG file. So I'm going to click the SVG file and it's going to upload it into Design Space. So it'll give you right here where it says image name. This says Flurry of Fun Layout because that's the title of my layout. And then I have an underscore here where it's SMQD. That's the initials for my business, Scrap Me Quick Designs. And so the image name usually comes in with whatever that designer has saved the SVG file as. You can always add to it. You can always change it. Whatever you need to do, you would change it here. And then there's tags. Now the tags are good when you're doing some searches and you're trying to find some things. So of course I want to put that it's a layout. I can add a comma here and I can say scrapbook. I can say, let's see, this is winter, snowflakes. I'll add some things that are on this particular project. Definitely mittens. And then you're going to hit save. Now you're going to see here where it says recently uploaded images, and it will show you just a few things. And what happens is people panic when they see this and they say, what happened to the SVG file that I just uploaded? If you click view all next to where it says recently uploaded images, when you click view all, it is now going to show you everything that you've ever uploaded. And then you pick what you want to put on your Design Space screen. So we're going to pick this layout that we're going to work with. I'm going to say insert. And lo and behold, we're going to find out that it is going to come in fairly large. When you go to the PDF that we've created for this particular project, on there, it lets you know in the directions, it says when you import the SVG file into Design Space, please resize the file to, and then it gives you the dimensions. A lot of designers do this with their SVG files because they know that they import kind of weird into Design Space sometimes. Sometimes it'll be dead on, you'll import it and it'll be perfectly the right size. All you want to do is go up here where the little lock mechanism is here for sizing, and you want to see what it says. Look how big that is. It's like twice as big as it needs to be. So we're going to just type in the numbers that I have on the PDF that you'll get if you download the file, but I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So we're going to go 11 for width, and then the height is 12.938. So now we've got this sized appropriately for what I intended when I designed it. So you'll have different designers when you import SVG files that will have made their file to fit a certain thing, okay? My file was created so it would fit on a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock, okay, for a scrapbook layout. Now, you will also notice if you look over here in your layers panel, it says ungroup. That means that all of these images have been grouped. And so we need to ungroup it to be able to use them and manipulate them some. Now, what I like to do when I do scrapbook pages is I come over here and I'm going to go into menu where it says shapes. I'm going to click on the square. It's going to pop up a square. And what I like to do is I'm going to be putting this on a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. And I want to make sure when I'm laying this out that everything's going to fit on that cardstock. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to make it 12 by 12. So I'm just doing that up here in the sizing thing, and now I have 12 by 12. The other thing I want to point out to you guys is that when you're working on scrapbook pages, typically we're all working on 12 by 12. Some people may be doing 8.5 by 11, or you may be doing a smaller size depending upon if you're making a mini album or something. But typically we're all working on 12 by 12. So now you've got this 12 by 12 piece here that you want to make your scrapbook page. Then you've got your elements on here, but it's really huge. Down here at the bottom of the screen, kind of grayed out, a lot of people don't realize that you can zoom your screen in here. I clicked the little minus one time, and now it's at 75%. Now I can see everything all on the same screen. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of this background page, this black page. I'm going to make that white, because when I make my scrapbook layout, I'm going to use a sheet of white 12 by 12 cardstock. Each of these elements can be changed color-wise. All of these are separate. When you click on them, see how they're all grouped separately. I'm going to talk about my particular layout, but anytime you're doing anything with SVG files, or even if you're just getting images from Design Space, everything I'm going to show you right now you can do. All right. So I've got a 12 by 12. Let's call this our template for our layout. And I'm going to pick the pieces from the SVG file to make the layout. Now I have just right-clicked. I've highlighted the blue image and I've right-clicked, and I'm going to say send to front, because now I can move this where I want on my layout. And let's see, this piece also I'm going to say send to front. I'm going to go right here. I'm going to kind of show you how I build what the layout looks like. Now, in my case, I've got a PDF that's going to give you guys the view of what this looks like. And I have an assembly video for you as well. But let's say as you're working with the pieces that came in your file, that you want to kind of try to figure out where things are going to go on here, and you want to change things to the color that you would like to cut out. That's something that a lot of people don't realize, particularly scrapbookers, because it really helps when you go to start cutting out your papers to have it all sync up. So this blue here in the middle is going to represent a blue piece of pattern paper that I'm going to use for the background on this layout. Now the top piece came in brown, but I think I'm going to use a piece of red pattern paper. Actually, it's a red stripe pattern paper, but I want to give it a color that it's going to kind of represent that. So when I go to cut that piece of paper, I've already got it, so it'll visually help show me what piece I want to use. And then the purple down here is actually going to be a piece of silver glitter paper, and we have a silver piece already here that it is a big snowflake with a bow on it. These two things are going to cut out of silver glitter paper actually, and then the snowflakes are grouped. Now sometimes when you import a SVG file in and you're trying to use it, some images like all of the different shapes were able to be ungrouped, but sometimes you have some that have been attached and you cannot ungroup these, but you can change the color of them, and they will cut out so you can use them individually on your layout, but you won't be able to ungroup them. So I wanted to point that out. That's something that trips people up a lot, particularly when you're working with scrapbook pages and you may have imported a file in and you're like, oh, well, these are all individual elements that I'm going to put on my scrapbook page, but for whatever reason, they've been grouped by the designer and you cannot ungroup them in Design Space. But we can change the color, and I know that I want these to cut out in the same paper that I'm going to cut out the glitter cardstock for this element and the bottom element. Now these are also going to cut out. And now I've got the title for this layout, and I intentionally made these different colors so that you can then change them to whatever colors you want to use. I do think what I'm going to use is I'm going to cut them out of red glitter paper. We're going to go in, and for each of these, I'm going to change it to the red here in the material color selector. So that when I go to cut this out, this is going to cut out of red glitter paper. What's going to happen when we go to make this is all of these elements are going to come up on our screen to cut out with our Cricut machines, right? So let me see. This white piece represents a 12 by 12 background. It is our template. We're not going to cut out a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. You're just going to use one. So this, if you try to send it to Design Space right now, what's going to happen is it's going to come up and tell you that it's too big. So let's just do that just so you see. So I'm going to say make it. And then when it's going to come up, you're going to get this box that says project incompatible. This project is not supported by your current machine selection. To resolve, select OK and adjust the affected layers. It's telling me that because you can only cut 11.5 by 11.5 or 11.5 by 23.5 if you're using the extra big long mat. If it tells you that, that just means that you need to come down here and you need to find where the square is, and it's even got a little highlight here. See where this little triangle is. A lot of people don't notice the little triangle. The little triangle is trying to help point you in the right way to tell you what's wrong with your file and you need to look at it. So we know that this is too big. Cricut's not going to cut it out for us. It's got a little thing. All we have to do is turn that eye here, just click that, and it's going to turn off that layer. So if you ever had any trouble and you're trying to figure out what to do, particularly when you're working with layouts and you're trying to use a template background, it's usually the size that you put your background on that's too big. We're going to turn that off right now. And then we're going to say make it again. And what typically happens, and is supposed to happen, is that you end up with all of your layers put on different colors based on the color that you assigned it, right? But so we've got the silver and we have the red pattern paper that we're going to use. But then we have all of those colored mittens that we're going to be putting on our layout. That's a lot of extra pieces to have to go through and put on your layout. I'm going to show you here in a minute how to fix that and make it so much easier. But you have the blue background layer, and then you have what you're going to cut out of the red cardstock. I wanted to show you guys a couple of things. One, did you know that you can move these once you're on this mat? You can move these around. So let's say you have a piece that's only, maybe the red cardstock piece you have is not a full 12 by 12 sheet. Maybe you only have a small amount of it. You can move these around on this screen so that then they're going to cut out. You could have a 4 by 4 piece of red cardstock, and now it's going to cut out in that 4 by 4. So that's another tip for you, particularly when you're working with different titles and stuff for your scrapbook pages. A lot of times you may have a big title and you don't have that big of a piece of paper you want to cut it on. So you can move this around so that it'll fit. It doesn't save it, so it'll do it for this one time when you go to cut it, but if you go to cut this file again, you'd have to rearrange it again. You would have to cut 9 different sheets of cardstock. So that's a lot of moving paper on and off to mats. It takes up a lot of time, but let me show you what you can do. So I'm going to say cancel. All right, so now we have all of these things. These things need to be cut out, but they're small. They're not very big, right? So if I kind of put it up here on my grid, I can tell that if I cut out, they would easily fit on a 3 by 3 square of cardstock. So I could cut each of these on its own 3 by 3 square, but then I'm still going to have to go through and keep switching out them on the different mats, right? But what if I could tell you that you could kind of trick Cricut into cutting more colors on one mat? Let me show you how to do that. So here are the colors. So we've got red, yellow, teal, green, and blue. But if you could just go in and change them so they're all the same color, there's several different ways to do this. I'm going to show you one. The easiest way to do this is that we're going to go in and we're going to make all of the mittens black. So we're just going to change them all to black. I'm just highlighting it and changing it to black. The other thing I can do, so you could just do these individually. I only have a few. It's not that big a deal. But I can also come over here to my color sync and over here in by my layers panel, click color sync, and then you can drag those mittens up into the black box there. So now it's going to change. Notice on the screen it's changing them to black. And then we're going to say make it again. And now when we go to the make it screen, it's gone from 9 different mats we have to use to 5. So that's a good savings there. And then when you go into where mittens that we just turned black, what you can do is you can move these so that they're going to fit with a 3x3 square of colored cardstock that you're going to cut out and put on your mat. So I just use my paper trimmer because 3x3 is really easy to cut. In fact, every time I have some scraps from cardstock that I'm using when I'm making layouts or cards, any of the excess that I have, if it'll cut it out in a 3x3, I will go ahead and do that. So I have like a little stash of 3x3 squares because most things I'm making for layouts and cards are smaller, and a 3x3 just seems to be a good size. Okay, so what I've done is visually here, there's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So here's a square here. Next to it, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. See how I've got them? I've moved the images so that they're going to fit within a 3x3 square. There's 4 across the top, and then there will be 1 down here. So now I'm going to be able to cut all of these out on the same mat, but I'm going to use the different colors of 3x3 squares of colored paper to be able to cut them all at the same time, and I will show you that next. So now that we have our file set up, now it's time to go ahead and put our pieces on. So we know that it's going to fit within a 3x3 square for each of the colors. So I'm just going to start with the first color. It doesn't really matter, but you're just going to start up in the corner. So I've got 3x3. You'll lay the next one in. Doesn't matter what order you're doing them in, you just want them in the right orientation on your cutting mat. And then this is the 5th one, and it goes right here. And then you're ready to go ahead and start cutting. Okay, and then you can unload our mat, and you'll see here that they are now all cut out on those squares. So I'll just take these off quickly to show you. And we have all of these cut without having to use separate mats. Okay, another tip I have for you is that once you've finished your cuts with your material on your Cricut mat, instead of trying to lift the paper up off of the mat, a lot of times your paper will start to curl. That's a big problem and something that I hear a lot of scrapbookers talk about. Flip your mat over first and remove the mat from the back of the paper. Hold the cut down and just lift up the mat. And now your paper will stay flat, and it'll make it so much easier when you go to put your scrapbook pages together. Okay, another tip that I have for you is I get asked all the time, what adhesives do I use when I'm working with my scrapbook layouts with my Cricut cuts? So I wanted to show you what I prefer to use. And the first thing, of course, is a tape runner. So I like the Tombow permanent adhesive. It's easy to control. It's easy to use. I do have one of the big Scotch tape runner guns. I'll use that occasionally, but I find that it's kind of hard to maneuver when I have smaller pieces. So I like to use this one because it's handheld. Plus I can buy this at pretty much any craft store. And if you order the refills online, they can get pretty inexpensive when you shop around. So this is what I like to use for the larger pieces. So when I'm doing my when I'm putting my photos on, when I'm putting my larger pieces of the background papers, this is what I use. Now, the other thing that I like to have on hand is some type of a glue pen. So I like the chisel tip Zig two-way glue pen. You can get these at the craft stores or buy it online. And this is what I use when I want to adhere, like things that are delicate like this, like the big snowflake or even the smaller snowflakes. I'll use this on the back of it to adhere it because I have a lot of control, and you'll see me when I do the assembly video, you'll see me using this. I'll also use it on the back of lettering if I'm going to put a title on to my layouts, or depending upon what I'm using, I'll also use one of the Xyron sticker makers, and you can just slide your letters into here and you pull this off and then take the letters off of it, and it's sticky on the back. So if you haven't used this, it's kind of a game changer. It's a real fun thing to have in your stash. It might be good to ask for the holidays if you don't already add one. Now this is the one that's called the Xyron X because it's small and it actually says, I think, sticker maker on it. They have other sizes of these, so you know, for some of my larger cuts I could certainly use a larger one, but I find I use this a lot for lettering and so forth. Now the other thing that I like to have on hand when I'm working on my layouts is I use a pair of fine tip tweezers. This is a Cricut one that I have. And then the other things I use on my layout to adhere things to it would be glue dots. So these are the little mini glue dots, and I actually use this to attach small things, but even like here where we're going to add some string to the bottom of our layout, I'll use a couple of these glue dots to help anchor them in place. So I often have this in my stash, and then I like to have a lot of dimension on my layout. So not a whole lot. I'm not building it up too much because I still want to get it in my protective cover for my scrapbook, but I will use just some foam pop dots and pop up different elements. Sometimes I'll pop up a title, or I'll pop up some embellishments like we do here on with the mittens on the layout. But I have these. But this is kind of my go-to tools that I use to adhere my different Cricut cuts when I'm making scrapbook layouts.